Alright mates, how's it going? In today's video, chapter 13 of Illidan by William King. It's been a few weeks since the Demon Hunter ritual, and Vandel's going to just stand around and think about those 2 weeks or something, and then have a fight. So let's go! Vandel had come on leaps and flips and bounds with his training in the weeks that had passed since the ritual. He regularly finished first in the Demon Hunter obstacle course, and he'd passed through all the obstacles without even taking a scratch. On this occasion, Siana came a close second. She smiled at him, but he could sense that she was kind of pissed off that he'd beaten her. Quite competitive, that one. Ravael came third, and then the rest finished. But who cares about them? Bunch of losers. However, they weren't the biggest losers out of everyone these past few weeks. For example, Mavalith and Celadon had grown progressively more monstrous looking as the days went by, so they went ahead and threw themselves off the roof. And Isteth went batshit crazy. Or more batshit crazy than she already had been, considering she'd lost all 3 of her kids and walked around with her baby's corpse strapped across her chest. So she went ahead and threw herself off the roof as well. The ritual itself had claimed a fair few peeps' lives. Over half the recruits just up and died before it was even over, because their hearts gave out, or their minds cracked, forcing Illidan to put them down out of mercy. Vandel had no doubt that it was their demons that had pushed them all over the edge. His own made its presence known every day, and he wasn't even certain he'd win this struggle in the long run. Some days, the depression and self-loathing were at an all-time high, and there were times when he was so filled with rage, he could barely restrain himself from running through the temple and just stabbing everyone. Which was another way in which a number of recruits had died since the ritual. Suicide by temple guard. However, this new supernatural training was kinda helping. Thanks to the instructors, Vandel had begun to learn how to tap the fell powers of the demon within him. He now knew how to augment his strength and speed. He could cast bolts of fell energy capable of burning through almost anything. And he had mad leeching skills, meaning he could drain the souls of his fallen victims in order to heal himself. But despite Vandel picking up quite a bit in such a short amount of time, Varadis, Netherel and Elandian always seemed to want more from him. Try harder. Master more things, you bitch. They were as driven as Illidan, and Vandel couldn't help but think there was some greater purpose behind all of this. Like some day was coming where everything he'd learned would be put to use. Another reason he thought that was because the great ritual was being performed every day now. Every day, more and more candidates arrived, and those that survived were fed through the training system that seemed as much designed to kill the weak as to teach the strong. Kill the weak. Kill the weak. He was weak. Kill them all. Vandel had somewhat learned to ignore the asshole-ish things the demon would say to him, but one thing that was difficult to ignore was the concern that his demon was gaining a level of control. One night in particular, Vandel woke up to find himself standing, clutching his dagger, and the last thing he wanted was to end up like Tibelius, yet another recruit who had died. Tibelius had been sleepwalking through cells at night and slitting throats, right up until Needle ended his nocturnal adventures by shoving skewers through the poor sod's face. So all in all, living here in the Black Temple felt like being locked in a cage with murderous beasts. Vandel looked around. He could see things now as well as when he had eyes. Better, in fact. Darkness obscured nothing, but Vandel couldn't help but suspect that the demon was aiding his perception. It wanted him to master his powers, almost as if the more he mastered them, the more vulnerable he became to temptation. But it didn't matter, because Vandel wanted the strength. He was glad he could see, glad he could hear better than most, glad he was as strong as an ogre and swifter than a lightsaber. And exhausted are you, old one? I'm just getting started. I hope so. I'm going to beat you in the sparring session, you know. Don't give in too easily, mate. When you struggle, it makes my victory sweeter. Victory is sweet. Flesh is sweeter still. A short time later, the aspirants had all gathered in the courtyard around the training rings, all of them eager for their chance to fight. Each ring was set up to contain 2 combatants fighting under the supervision of one of the trainers. The combatants' weapons were blunted by spell-wrought auras, just to make sure any landed blow would bruise rather than do any real damage. Ravael stepped into the circle with a scythe in each hand, whilst Vandel entered wielding 2 daggers. You're going to learn the meaning of defeat today, mate. As the battle commenced, Ravael sprang forward, blazingly fast. His scythe impacted on Vandel's bicep with numbing force. If this were a real fight, he'd have lost an arm already. It was only meant as a bit of bants, but Vandel's rage surged. That wasn't fair, but he quickly dismissed that thought. A demon wouldn't fight fair either. In a real fight, I'd come and tear your heart out. Vandel had meant that as a bit of bants too, but it came out utterly serious. Ravael came in to unleash another flurry of blows, but this time, Vandel was ready. Every blow Ravael launched, Vandel parried, and at the end of the storm of attacks, Vandel reached out and struck Ravael just above the heart with his dagger. A fraction quicker and it would have been a killing blow, but it wasn't a fraction quicker, so it was nothing but a flesh wound. A scratch. Another spark of rage ignited within Vandel. He would not be mocked, not by someone so weak and pitiful. Ravael sensed this change in mood, and the air between them began to crack with tension. Vandel then threw himself forward, aiming for the head, so Ravael raised both sides to block, but in doing so, left his belly unguarded, which Vandel struck with his second dagger. And now you would be dead. I win again. Vandel was about to turn away when he heard Ravael growling, and as Vandel looked back towards his buddy, he could see spittle dripping from his mouth like a rabid animal. I am not defeated. Ravael's figure then began to morph. His skin turned blacker than night, whilst great wings of shadow lifted from his back. The smell of brimstone and demon filled the air, and then Ravael struck, hard. Both blades impacted painfully on Vandel's arms. Had they been real blows, Vandel would have been crippled, or dead. But that wasn't enough for his opponent. Ravael kept striking. Vandel brought his own blades up and managed to parry most of them, but one blow caught him above the temple, and drew blood. Shadow had engulfed the scythes in Ravael's hands. It appeared his power had overcome the wards upon the blades, so they were deadly now, and Ravael didn't look like he was going to stop anytime soon. The spectators outside the ring licked their lips. None of them seemed to be in any rush to put a stop to this either. Even Varadis simply gestured as if to say, carry on. He looked more interested in this latest development than worried about the outcome. This time, I will win. Now, Vandel had two choices here. He could end it by stepping out of the ring and admitting defeat, or he could not do that. But the smell of his own blood and the feeling of pain had set off another spark of rage, and with that rage came power. He raised his hands and wove a thunderbolt of fell energy, and then fired it from his fingertips right at Ravael. Ravael screamed as his flesh roasted, whilst Vandel just fed even more strength into the spell. He knew he should stop, but he didn't want to. He poured more and more strength into his fell lightning until Ravael lay still and had stopped screaming because he was dead. At which point, Vandel drew upon his dead friend's soul and healed his own wounds. Vandel looked out at the spectators. He was tempted to unleash his power on them, bunch of jerks, but that would be a fatal decision, so he fought the urge down. He then looked over at Varadis, who just shook his head and looked unimpressed. He tried to kill you, and if you had not drawn on my power, he would have succeeded. You owe me your life. And we're leaving it there. Oh dear. Add Vandel to the list of top 10 World of Warcraft characters that would be really shit friends, I guess. In the next chapter, we'll spend some time hearing the POV of the actual title character of the book for a change. As usual, link in the description if you're interested in buying this book. Also, there's links to my Discord server and my Patreon page too. If you enjoyed this video, like, subscribe, all of that bollocks. And all that's left to say is, thanks for watching, and see ya!